Okay, so get ready to dive deep, folks.
Yeah.
Because this time you're sending us straight into the heart of Freemasonry. Symbols, rituals. And we can't forget, enough conspiracy theories to fill a whole library.
Yeah. It's really something.
We're going to be looking into the roots of this whole thing, trying to crack the code on some of their more interesting symbols.
Right.
And yeah, we're even going to be tackling straight on those Illuminati connections. No shying away.
It's funny, isn't it? Like when you think Freemasons, you think hidden knowledge, secret power.
Oh, absolutely.
But the truth is, it all started out, well, pretty practical, really.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we all imagine like shadowy figures in hooded robes, but in reality, they were builders.
You saying like actual stonemasons?
Exactly.
Chiseling away at cathedrals and whatnot. Huh. Not exactly the image that usually comes to mind.
No, not quite, no. We're talking about medieval Europe here, these guilds of craftsmen. Seriously skilled, these guys. Essential back then for building those massive, intricate structures.
Okay, so then how do we get from, like, building a cathedral to, well, whatever it is Freemasons are about today?
So as architecture evolved, you see, so did these guilds. They transitioned from what they call operative masonry, that's the hands-on building stuff, to speculative masonry.
Speculative.
And that's where we get all the symbolism we associate with Freemasonry today.
So instead of laying bricks, they were building philosophies.
Precisely. Those tools, those practices they used, they became metaphors for building character, for aligning your actions with virtue. Take the concept of squaring the circle, for example.
So you're going to have to break that one down for me.
Okay, so in geometry, right, squaring the circle, it's impossible, can't be done. But for Freemasons, it represents this constant striving for moral perfection, aligning your life with their values.
So it's like they're using those physical tools to try and understand these big abstract ideas about, like, how to live a good life.
Exactly. And that whole shift, that move to speculative masonry, it's key because it explains how Freemasonry went from just builders to attracting all sorts, philosophers, intellectuals,
Right.
even royalty. These were people drawn to this idea of personal growth, but through this really structured system of knowledge and symbolism.
Which kind of brings us to the whole degrees thing.
Yeah.
Something we've seen pop up a lot in the research.
Right, right.
Now, this isn't like some secret ranking system within the Freemasons, is it? Like, higher degree, more power.
Not at all. No, no. It's not about power. It's more about, I guess you'd call it a progression through knowledge, like earning a degree. But instead of, say, physics, it's moral and philosophical understanding.
Right.
So the most recognizable structure they have, the Blue Lodge, it's got 3 degrees, entered apprentice, fellowed curved, and then finally you become a master mason.
Okay. So you're basically initiated into like deeper and deeper levels of understanding as you move up.
Exactly. Each degree comes with its own set of lessons, stories, allegories, and yes, even rituals.
And I bet those rituals are a big part of why there are so many conspiracy theories, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's all very secretive, and that just adds to the mystique, doesn't it?
For sure. I mean, you're not just going to reveal all the inner workings of your group to anyone on the street.
Of course not. And plus, you find rituals in all sorts of groups throughout history, not just Freemasons. It's a way of creating a sense of belonging, a shared purpose, and sometimes even reverence.
Right. Makes sense the more you think about it. Okay, so let's talk about something else then. A big question a lot of people have is about religion.
Okay, yeah.
Because a lot of folks mistake Freemasonry for a religion in itself. What's the deal with their beliefs?
It's a really common misconception. They do technically require a belief in a supreme being.
Right.
They often call it the great architect of the universe.
Okay.
But crucially, it's not tied to any one religion in particular.
Interesting. So just hypothetically, you could have a mosque, a synagogue, and a church.
Yeah.
All right next to each other, and they could all be filled with Freemasons.
Theoretically, yes. It's more about finding that common ground, those core moral principles, the search for a greater truth, however an individual might define it. That being said, this whole approach to faith, well, let's just say it hasn't always been smooth sailing with organized religion.
Oh. Sounds like there might be a juicy little historical tidbit in there somewhere.
Let's just say, back in the 1700s, Pope Clement XII, he actually went so far as to condemn Freemasonry.
Wow. Officially.
Officially. And it wasn't just about different opinions on faith either. You see, Freemasonry, it also emphasized reason, individual thought, and these ideas, well, they represented a challenge to the church's authority back then.
Wow, what a time to be alive. It's like they became this lightning rod for this huge debate between tradition and progress.
Yeah.
And speaking of fascinating things, we can't forget about their symbols. We've got to unpack those. Let's start with the one everyone knows, the square and compass. Classic.
Ah, yes. Iconic emblem, and you see it everywhere. And it really does a great job of representing the core of what Freemasonry is all about. So the square that symbolizes morality, virtue, that reminder to always keep your actions, well, square with your principles.
Makes sense. Like I'm picturing a carpenter, meticulously measuring a piece of wood to make sure it's perfectly straight and true.
Exactly. And then you have the compass, which for them represents self-control, finding that balance in life, setting healthy boundaries, both literally and metaphorically, just like a compass draws a perfect circle. But here's where it gets interesting. These tools, in the real world, you use them separately, right? But in Freemasonry, they are always depicted together.
Interesting. What's the significance there?
Well, it's about recognizing that morality, that inner compass and self-control, they're inseparable. Can't have one without the other. Always striving for that perfect balance between action and restraint. The square and compass working together in perfect harmony.
And that idea of balance, of harmony, kind of goes back to that concept of, what was it? Squaring the circle, wasn't it?
Precisely. It all ties together.
It's like piecing together a giant puzzle.
Exactly. Each symbol, each ritual, each teaching adds another layer of understanding.
Okay, before we go any further, we got to address the elephant in the room, or should I say the all-seeing eye in the room.
Dear chuckles softly.
Time for some conspiracy theories. Here we go.
Cue the dramatic music. This one really gets people going.
It's true, though. It really does. Okay, so before we get too far down that rabbit hole.
Believe me, we're going there.
Of course, we have to. But first, let's actually unpack what the symbol means in Freemasonry, okay?
Okay.
So they call it the Eye of Providence.
So less like Big Brother is watching you, more like divine guidance.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about the watchful presence, you could say, of a higher power. A reminder that our actions, they have consequences. And this seeing eye concept, it's not unique to Freemasons at all. We see it throughout history, across different cultures, often symbolizing accountability, divine justice even.
Right.
I mean, think of ancient Egypt, the Eye of Horus. Or even in Christianity, right? The idea of God seeing everything.
Yeah. It's this really universal human experience. We all share that feeling of being observed, maybe even judged by something bigger than ourselves.
It's kind of like, that feeling you get when you suddenly realize there's a security camera you didn't see before? Except instead of freaking out, it's more about taking stock of yourself, your actions.
Exactly. It's about self-reflection, absolutely. Which, speaking of powerful symbols, we can't forget the letter G.
Oh, right.
You always see that G so prominently displayed in those Masonic lodges.
Yeah, it's almost like their version of band merch or something, like gotta rep your group.
Right, but what a lot of people don't realize is it's actually got this really cool duality to it.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Hit me with it. What's the double meaning behind the G?
So for Freemasons, that G, it stands for both God and geometry. It brings together those two key concepts, that belief in a divine order to the universe, right? But also their drive to understand that order through reason, through study.
So it's about what? Trying to align your own moral compass with some kind of big cosmic blueprint.
You got it. It's recognizing that everything's connected, the smallest atom to the vast, expanse of the universe. And this idea, it's actually reflected in their whole fascination with sacred geometry.
Hold on, sacred geometry. Now we're going full-on Da Vinci Code here.
Well, think of it this way. They believe certain geometric shapes and proportions, they hold a kind of spiritual meaning, like they reflect the blueprint of creation itself. The pyramids, the spirals you see in a seashell, even the proportions of the human body, it's all connected.
Wow. So they're really looking for those hidden patterns, the underlying principles, the stuff that makes the universe tick.
Exactly. And this whole quest for knowledge, for understanding, it's attracted some pretty big names throughout history. I mean, you've got your George Washingtons, Benjamin Franklins, even Winston Churchill.
Right. Talk about a who's who of influential figures.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what was it about Freemasonry that drew them in? The sense of brotherhood, the philosophical discussions, or was there maybe something more to it?
It's a question that's fueled a lot of speculation, that's for sure.
Well, that brings us to the heart of it all, doesn't it? The Freemason conspiracy theories.
We knew it was coming.
We couldn't do a deep dive into Freemasonry without them. World domination, Illuminati ties, the whole New World Order thing. Where do we even start?
Well, I think it's important to start by acknowledging that The desire for a more unified world,
Right.
whether it's for good or for bad, it's not exactly new, is it?
Sure.
It's been around for centuries. It's not inherently a bad idea, but it does tend to get tangled up with our fears about power, about control.
And those anxieties, they often get projected onto groups like the Freemasons, secret rituals, all those symbols.
Yeah.
It's easy to get suspicious.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's much easier to point the finger at a shadowy organization than it is to actually try and wrap your head around how complex things like geopolitics really are.
That's very true. Okay, so let's address some of these theories head on then. First, upworld domination. Are the Freemasons really pulling the strings from behind the scenes?
Well, if they are, they're not doing a very good job of it. Seriously, though, there's just no evidence to support that idea that they're somehow controlling governments, economies. That's just not how the world works.
It's classic conspiracy thinking, though, right?
Yeah.
Just because there have been some powerful people who were Freemasons doesn't mean they're taking orders from some Masonic puppet master.
Exactly. It's mistaking correlation for causation. And it really ignores how complex history is, how people actually behave.
Okay, so what about the Illuminati? Now, that's one conspiracy theory that just won't quit. Is there actually any connection to Freemasonry, or is it all just like one big fabrication?
Okay, this is important. The Illuminati, they were a real group,
Okay.
but they were very short-lived, and they had totally different goals to Freemasonry.
Okay, give me the SparkNotes version then. Who were they?
So they started in Bavaria, late 1700s, right in the thick of the Enlightenment, remember. Reason, individual liberty, all that. Well, they were all about promoting those ideals. But, and this is important, they also were big on secrecy, which ultimately led to their downfall.
Ah, so a bit too radical, a bit too cloak and dagger for their own good.
Pretty much. The government shut them down within a decade. And while, yeah, there are those theories about them infiltrating Freemasonry, no historical proof. None at all.
So then why are these two groups always linked in people's minds? Why is it always Freemasons equals Illuminati?
I think it goes back to what we were saying before. People are just drawn to the mystery, secret agendas, hidden knowledge. It's a good story. Plus, let's be honest, the name Illuminati, it just sounds cool, doesn't it? Mysteries, secret societies, controlling things from the shadows.
It's straight out of a Dan Brown novel.
Exactly.
Okay, so moving on from shadowy figures to, let's say, more economic anxieties.
Okay.
We've got to talk about this idea of the golden billion. That idea that only a select few actually benefit from all the prosperity in the world.
Right.
Is there a Masonic connection there, or is that another conspiracy theory rabbit hole we're going down?
Well, there are definitely theories out there, yes. Some try to tie this global inequality directly to Freemasons, saying they're the ones orchestrating it all, for their own benefit.
Like there's some secret backroom meeting where they're all using their little Masonic compasses to, divide up the world's wealth or something.
Right. But let's be real, while that golden billion concept, it does highlight a real issue, that gap between the haves and the have-nots, massive problem. But it's not because of some grand conspiracy, it's way more complicated than that.
Right. It's those deeply ingrained systems we've built to historical power structures.
Exactly. So maybe instead of looking for some shattery group to blame, we should be focusing on how to create a system that's actually fair, equitable for everyone.
Right.
Address the root causes, not chase shadows.
Love it. Okay, so now that we've, let's say, thoroughly debunked some of the more out there theories,
You tried.
let's bring it back to the heart of Freemasonry.
Okay.
After all the mystery and speculation, what does this fraternity actually stand for? What's at its core?
I think when you really boil it down, it's about personal growth, trying to live an ethical life, serving something bigger than yourself.
So less about, controlling the world, more about not controlling yourself.
You could say that. It's that idea that the real work, the real building, it happens from within. And, that idea, it really resonates with people, even today. This desire for connection, for brotherhood, for giving back to your community.
It's very timeless when you think about it.
It really is.
Makes you wonder, though, could we create something like a modern-day Freemasonry? I mean, today's world, it's a completely different ballgame. Everything's online. Everything moves so fast.
It's a fascinating question. What if you took those core principles, the pursuit of knowledge, living ethically, service to others, and found a way to reimagine them for our digital age?
Right. Instead of a secret handshake, you've got like a secret emoji code or something, a virtual lodge,
Yeah.
a global community, but connected by those shared values, that commitment to self-improvement.
Imagine that. I wonder how those rituals, those symbols might change. Would they even translate to the digital world? Or would something entirely new emerge?
And how do you balance, the weight of all that tradition, centuries of history, with the need to stay relevant, to connect with someone who grew up with like instant information at their fingertips?
Yeah, you don't want to lose the heart of what makes something meaningful. But you also don't want to end up a relic of the past either.
It's like those old buildings we talked about at the beginning. You can preserve their beauty, their history, but you can also adapt them for how we live today.
Exactly. And that's something we can all ask ourselves. How do we take those old ideas, those values, and make them meaningful in our own lives today?
Definitely something to think about. And hey, maybe our listeners have some ideas. This whole deep dive, it's really shown how much our perceptions are shaped by both history and mystery, hasn't it?
No doubt. I mean, we went from medieval stonemasons to modern-day conspiracy theories. We talked symbolism, secret societies.
Hopefully busted a few myths along the way.
Always a plus. But maybe, just maybe, we've also sparked some ideas for a whole new kind of community. One built on those values of, knowledge, ethics, supporting each other.
And along the way, I think we've been reminded that the most interesting mysteries, the ones worth exploring, they're often closer than we think.
Well said. The search for knowledge, for self-improvement, it never really ends.
It's a journey, not a destination, right? So to everyone listening, keep asking questions, keep searching for the truth, and most importantly, keep an open mind.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself.
And hey, maybe keep a compass and a square handy too, just in case. Until next time, keep diving deep, and we'll be here to help you navigate those murky depths.